All right, everybody should be able to see my screen right now. So again, apologies for the late start there, but I'll go ahead and get us started here. Uh, Good afternoon. My name is Del Mackey, and I am one of the Senior Economic Development Officers here at Arrowhead Center. And today we're actually going to kind of talk about the SBIR and STTR programs and how they can be a great factor for getting your innovation funded and exactly what they do for small businesses. So just as a quick overview, the SBIR and STTR programs are a federal funding opportunity. And what they allow for is for building out your innovative idea and trying to test out the feasibility of it. So is it something that works? Is it something that you can actually put resources behind? Is it something that as you move forward, you can actually show that there is a need, there's a market for it, and it is something that needs to be developed. With these programs being a federal opportunity, they have a couple of goals. Really, it is to grow the innovative ecosystem across the nation so that it pushes forward with this is what businesses need, this is how they need to grow, this is how products really need to get to the market. And as you see here, there are a few goals with these programs. So the first one is it is a way for the federal government to actually inject research and development dollars directly into small businesses. This is one of the only programs like that. Most other opportunities for research and development are funded through grants and contracts with the federal government, but a lot of times those are to research institutions like universities, federally funded labs, things like that. And they're also to kind of stimulate technology innovation. So the entire purpose of these programs is to really look at innovative ideas, unique ideas, things that can be pushed forward, things that can be created. So a couple of highlights about why these programs are really great for small businesses. The very first one is that it's equity-free investment into your company. What that means is that for these opportunities and for the money that you get, you don't actually have to give up any portion of your business. You don't have to actually give up any portion of your idea. They're non-dilutive funding. They are the largest source of non-dilutive funding for small businesses. Another really great factor with these programs is you can actually demonstrate the feasibility of your idea. What that means is you don't have to have everything set in stone. This can be something that you thought about, something that you dreamed about, something that you as a consumer said, I sure wish I could solve this problem this way, or this is a product that people need. This is a product that I need. This is something that needs to go forward. And when you try to do that on your own, for a business, you're going to spend a lot in research and development. R&D is typically very, very costly for businesses, but this is a great way to actually offset those costs. You don't have to self-fund research and development. You don't have to go out there and look at, well, how can I keep my business going while I'm trying these different things, while I'm trying to create something that is totally unique, while I'm making something that nobody else has done that is truly innovative. It also does a really great job of providing for some due diligence for things like follow-on funding. So anyone that's ever approached like venture capitalists, angel investors, anyone like that knows that before most of those organizations are willing to invest in a company, they have to know what's in it for me. What is the return? How much risk am I taking on? And the more risk that those investors take on, the more they're going to want an equity share. The more they're going to want for taking control of the business, for taking control of the idea. this is a really great way to actually reduce that risk by being able to show that this is something that works. Somebody already believed it enough that the federal government gave us money to test this out, to validate it. That offsets that risk component that can lead to a lot better equity shares when it comes to finding outside funding, finding outside opportunity, and just outside money to keep the business growing. And also at the heart of it, it's a great way to grow a business, get a team together. For the way that these programs are set up and the funding mechanisms, typically to achieve the demonstration of the feasibility, it is a lot of time cost. It's a lot of talent cost. It's a lot of labor cost because you're really just looking at, can this be created? Can this be done? Can this be made? So when you're doing that, you have to get together a team, you have to get together expertise, you have to find potential partners. And those partnerships and that team are the ones that are typically going to help you grow, going to help you succeed, going to help you go after new opportunities. This is a great way to fund those first steps. So the SBIR program overall, again, supports that research and development, and it does that by providing a set-aside. So with the set-aside, it's actually 3.2% of the research budget for any agency that gets extramural funding that is over $100 million per year. Essentially what that means is any of the federal agencies that do research and development that actually provide funding to outside entities. So rather than, National Science Foundation funding a project that one of their program managers is taking on, they give money to, a university like New Mexico State University to look at solving a problem. That money is extramural money, and it's 3.2%. So as research and development budgets have increased for those agencies over the years, it's ultimately meant more as a set-aside. And as those budgets increase, the percentages also increase. In 2018, it was $2.7 billion was used to fund small businesses that are creating innovative ideas. And it would be remiss if I didn't talk about the sister opportunity, the STTR, which stands for Small Business Technology Transfer Research. The purpose behind creating this program was there are a lot of really great technologies that are kind of sitting on the shelf at universities, that are sitting on the shelf at, federal development centers like Sandia or LANL or any of the other DOE labs. And there's nobody that's going to take it forward. They're not making that critical leap from invention to innovation. And so that's why they created this program, the STTR. So the original purpose was to move those technologies that are kind of just collecting dust on the shelf towards a commercial product. And the way they did that was by partnering with small businesses. Now, there are still some vestiges of the STTR program that are in effect. So if you go after an STTR, you have to be working with a research institution. And for their purposes, a research institution is just somebody that's getting federal dollars to actually create something. But because it is a much higher percentage, it is only for research agencies that spend over $1 billion a year in extramural funding. It's a lot fewer of the agencies. So out of the 12 that participate, which we're about to go over, only 5 of them actually also participate in the STTR program. So what are some of the differences between the SBIR and STTR programs? Well, one of the major differences is the partnering requirements. So under an SBIR, the business can take on all of the work themselves. They can perform all of the work themselves. They can get all of the funding as long as they have the tools, the resources, the experience the expertise, really just the wherewithal to kind of validate that idea and move it forward towards a product. The STTR, though, does require that the small business works with a research institution. So you can't have an award under an STTR without also including some type of funding to a research institution. And that funding can come in the form of, access to lab space, access to previously held IP, access to, professors at a university, or access to researchers at a lab. Whatever that access is, there has to be some sort of agreement between the small business and that research institution. Also, with the SBIR and STTRs, so under the SBIR, the principal investigator are really just the person that is in charge of making sure that the project completes, the person that has the most experience in this area, the person that, for lack of a better term, oftentimes acts as the project manager. Then they have to be employed by the small business as their primary employment. Now, different agencies have different definitions of what primary employment is, but the basic definition is just more than 50% of their time. So you can't only work for the business for 20% of the time and then work for somebody else that's kind of a lot of times actually paying your bills 80% of the time. That person has to be primarily employed by the small business during the period of performance. So that is just when you're actually doing the work. It's not when you're creating an application, not when you're applying for the programs. Under the STTR, for 4 out of the 5 agencies, that principal investigator can actually come from the research institute. So you don't have to bring on somebody that is going to cost you a lot in your budget just to manage the project. The person that's going to manage the project can actually be an employee of that research institute. And then I did mention that some of the work has to go to the research institution under an STTR. So although the business can do everything under an SBIR, you can actually bring on potential partners. You can bring on other businesses, larger businesses, other small businesses, even research institutions. You can essentially farm out that work under a subcontract. And that can be for up to 33% of the award. So for up to a third of the money and up to a third of the work, the business can partner with someone. Under an STTR, they're forced to partner with that research institution. And rather than maximums, the STTR program works under minimums. So there's a minimum of 40% of the work and funding that goes to the business, a minimum of 30% that goes to the research institution, and then the rest, that extra 30%, can kind of go anywhere. More money can go to the small business, more money can go to the research institution, or that money can be used to bring on somebody else, to bring on another lab, to bring on another business, however it needs to be split up, as long as the work can be done. Then I mentioned the agencies and the set-asides, but one thing to note about the difference between the SBIR and STTR programs is under an STTR, there has to be some sort of formal agreement for how the intellectual property will be shared. Now, the agencies don't dictate that. They don't say that you have to give so much of potential revenues to the research institution. It has to be protected this way. They have to do this. There just has to be some sort of acknowledgement between the business and what they call RI, our research institute, on who's actually going to be in charge of protecting that idea. How is that going to be split? How is the ownership of the idea and anything that spawns off of it going to be managed between these two entities? Under an SBIR, it's essentially a work for hire program. So there doesn't have to be any sort of agreement, even if you're moving somebody else's idea forward, as long as they give you rights to that. And as long as they say that it's something that you can develop. It's something that we are willing to share with you. So this is just a quick overview about all of the different agencies that participate in the SBIR and STTR programs. As I mentioned, under these programs, 12 agencies participate in the SBIR, and it's ones like the Department of Agriculture. The Department of Commerce is actually split between the National Institutes of Science and Standards and Technology, as well as the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. Under the STTR, any of the ones in gray under an STTR also participate under the SBIR. And so that's why there's no real delineation there. It's all of the agencies have at least the SBIR program. The ones in gray have, in addition to the SBIR program, the STTR program. And now that you have the list, you know, one of the things that you're probably wondering is, well, what do they focus on? What's important to them? Why do I need to know about who funds these type of ideas based on what I'm building? So for the agencies, it's a lot of times in their name. You know, someone like the USDA, the US Department of Agriculture, is really interested in things that relate to food, things that relate to agriculture, things that relate to, you know, healthy food safety, food security, things like that. If you're coming up with an idea, or you have an idea that was within that realm, then the USDA is going to be very interested. Whereas someone like Department of Energy focuses entirely on energy. So energy storage, energy transmission, energy transformation, anything related to energy is going to be interesting to Department of Energy. But if you're coming up with something agriculture related, DOE is probably not going to be a fit, just because it's not within their research specialization and their specialization of science. Now, there are other agencies in here, like the National Science Foundation, who pretty much covers everything. NSF is very interested in anything related to science. So anything related to food, anything related to health, anything related to safety, anything related to things like cybersecurity, NSF is going to be interested in, because NSF is just about pushing the boundaries of scientific knowledge and scientific discovery. So they do pretty much anything except clinical trials. So if you're creating something health related and you need to actually test it out, need to see how it works on people, you know, need to run through a trial, NSF's not going to fund the trial, but somebody else might. And that's actually really important when you're looking at the agencies to know what are the possibilities, because some agencies fund more and some agencies have longer periods of performance than others. It really does vary based on the different agencies. So someone like the EPA, or the Environmental Protection Agency, is $100,000 for 6 months for their phase 1. And then it goes up to $400,000 for 12 months for a phase 2. Now with NSF, they have much larger pools because they are a much larger agency, have a much larger focus across different areas. So for someone like NSF, their period of performance and their funding under phase 1 is $256,000 for 12 months. And that's just to test the idea. That's just to look at the feasibility. Can I make this work? Is it something that's, you know, interesting? Is it something that can create a product? Now their phase 2, because that's when you're looking at doing prototyping, is for a longer period of time and a much larger pool of money. So for NSF, a phase 2 is $750,000 for 24 months of work. So that's actually taking forward that idea that you validated, taking forward that I can build something innovative, I can build a product, and, you know, creating a low-level prototype, putting the pieces together and making sure that it's something that is valuable to a customer. Because there are those differences in funding, you know, There are a lot of other differences too. There are differences between the proposal requirements, so how they needed to be formatted, what that layout is, page counts, everything like that. And also how often you can submit a proposal to them. So a lot of the agencies only have windows once a year, where if you miss their window for a submission, it's just like a contract opportunity where they say, we want to hear about what you're working on. Can you do this for us? You have this submission date. And once that goes away, you may have to wait another year before that opportunity will come up that you can actually apply for. Very similar here for these agencies. A lot of them will fund once a year. Some of them fund twice a year, and some of them fund up to 4 times a year. Like NSF has 4 windows that they operate under. So these differences really drive who's going to be interested, what is my focus, how do I move forward. And then along with those differences between the agencies, there's also another one that is a little bit key here in the fact of a granting agency versus a contracting agency. So granting agencies are all about how can you develop something? How can you push, our understanding of knowledge forward? Granting agencies just want to see what is new, what is interesting, and what is unique. So by that fact, granting agencies don't buy things. You might be able to sell 1 or 2 items to individuals within a granting agency, but just as a whole, they don't buy products, they don't source things. There's very large restrictions on what they can do. Because of that, most of the things that they look at and how they focus on their topics, how they focus across the board, is very scattered and very wide. So rather than saying, we want to look at this very specific, thing that exists out there in science. For instance, someone like National Institutes of Health saying, this particular drug compound only has a 5%, absorption rate, through the cell wall and cell membrane. We want to know why that is. They'll look at, a larger swath. They'll say, lots of people suffer from, for instance, Parkinson's. We want to know how you can improve those people's lives. Is it something that is a biomedical technology that can actually reduce tremors? Is it a drug? Is it a better way to diagnose these diseases early? They're going to be very wide and very open to receiving new ideas. Whereas contracting agencies are very focused. They have a very specific problem. So like the Department of Defense has lots of warfighters that they have to protect. And they come up across very specific problems when they're out there in the field. So when you look at someone that is a contracting agency, they have a solution, or they have a problem that they need a solution for. They are going to buy things. They are going to be the customer. They want to buy things that are going to help them get over this problem, help them solve it, help them address it. So when you look at those, the things that they're interested in are typically very, very focused. Department of Defense might have a topic area that says, 50 nautical miles off the coast of this island nation, we lose 5% satellite degradation. We want something that won't lose that percentage. So they're going to be kind of form factor, kind of fit down to address a very specific thing. And this is a listing of kind of the granting versus contracting agencies. It doesn't matter a lot in knowing that some of them are granting and some of them are contracting. The big key thing here is knowing who your customer is going to be, because ultimately customers drive whether an agency is going to fund something. These programs are all about building innovative solutions that have commercial potential. So when you look at commercial potential, those contracting agencies are going to be the customer. They want to buy something. They want to buy something that solves their problem. You know, like DoD or NASA, or even, you know, like the Department of Homeland Security. They have particular issues that they need addressing. Whereas like the National Science Foundation, Department of Energy, and USDA are open to all sorts of ideas. They just say, we recognize these as problems that need to be addressed, or we recognize these as there's a lack of understanding when it comes to the science that drives this. But there are some agencies that actually have both. And in the case of both, they're not only going to be interested in, can you sell us something that's going to solve our problem? But they're also going to be interested in, how do you push this forward? Who else is going to actually buy this? Because we only buy a couple, but you have to be able to build your business to sell this to a larger market. This is just a really quick listing of what the different phase 1 and phase 2 kind of funding levels are. One thing to know, and why there is this large difference when you look at what a phase 1 is versus what a phase 2 is because phase 1 just addresses, can this be made? Is this something that can be created? It looks at the feasibility of that idea and says, you know what, I think this might happen. I think I can make something that'll actually solve this. I think I can make something that is interesting and unique. The funding under the phase 1s isn't to get you all the way to the solution, but it's for you to, at the end of it, have a really great idea that, you know what, I think this can be solved. I've been able to test it out. I've been able to do some research. And I have a pretty good idea that this is something I can actually do, that this is something I can create. Once you get that phase 1, then you can look at that phase 2. And the reason the phase 2 is, you know, more money and a longer time period is that once you're in that phase 2, they want you to actually go forward. They want you to take the results of that phase 1 and say, okay, I looked at this, this is feasible, this is something I can do, this is something I think I can create. And then they want you to actually build a market-ready prototype. So something where you can go, I think this will work this way. I've been able to build something. Now I'm pretty much ready to get it out to the market. Because when you're done with the phase 2, then your phase 3 is actually trying to sell it on the commercial market, trying to make money off of it, trying to grow your business. And that phase 3 process is typically not directly funded. You have to find other opportunities. There really is no phase 3 SBIR or STTR program. It is going out there, you know, finding contracting opportunities, finding other grants, finding venture capitalist funding, finding other funding that will take you forward and get you to the market, make you start selling something. So one of the big kind of things to focus on when you're looking at the difference between a phase 1 and a phase 2 is the award rates. So for a phase 1, out of the gate, if you're never gone over, if you've never created a proposal package, typically it's going to take you anywhere between 80 to 120 hours, just because there's a lot of documentation to put together. You have to come up with, you know, some figures for how you're going to use that. Like say for National Science Foundation, $256,000, and you have to have a plan for why you need that money. And across the board, the agencies on a phase 1 have about a 15% success rate for your first submission. What I mean by that is when you put together that proposal and you submit it, there's typically about a 15% the rate, or a 15% win rate. They're just going to fund it right out of the gate and say, this is great. You hit all the markers. We really believe in this. We think you can move this forward. However, sometimes they'll reject it and they say, well, you know, it didn't get there, or we don't really understand the commercial market here. One of the great things about these programs is they give you really good feedback about why they didn't fund it, what was missing, what else was needed, what needed to be focused on that the reviewer just didn't understand. If you take all of that data, you take that feedback and you actually integrate it back into your proposal, kind of tighten those areas up, make them better, your win rate goes up for that same idea because you valued their feedback. You looked at what the reviewer said about, I didn't understand what you were trying to get at here, or, you know, this doesn't seem like a valid use of the funding. I would look at using it this way. Or the team wasn't really there. You might think about bringing in somebody like this. So when you take that, it's just like getting a paper back in college. You know, your professor will redline it. They'll say, this needs to be fixed. You need to think about this differently. This is something that might need to be focused on. And you take that feedback, you take that, you know, critique, and you make it better. Then you're going to get a better grade on it when you resubmit it. Very similar thing here. Now the phase twos have a much higher win rate. They're about a 45% rate across the agencies, but that is because with limited capability or limited other opportunity, you have to have a phase one before you have a phase two. So that phase one win, you know, sets that in motion. It sets that tone, and they say, okay, we believe that you can create this. We believe it's interesting. And then as long as you hit your markers, as long as you hit those milestones during a phase one, as long as you showed that it's feasible, you know, it's about a 50-50 whenever you go to a phase two on, can this continue on? Can this be further developed? Is this something that can be made into a product that people want? Because, you know, again, that's kind of the heart of these programs, is that innovation, creating something unique, creating something different, creating something that hasn't been done before. You know, really innovation is doing something new for different results, you know, using less resources, looking at a different market need, doing different things that aren't currently being done. Innovation doesn't mean high tech either. There are some low tech things that have actually been funded. So famously, the Department of Defense actually funded comic books for PTSD patients. It was a way to make them feel like they were getting back into how normal civilian life was. It actually helped them move through some of the blocks in their minds. It made them feel regular and normal again. And that was innovative enough, it was different enough and unique enough that the DoD funded it and said, if this can solve this problem, we're willing to put money into it. You know, comic books have been around for years upon years upon years. It's not the newest thing, it's not the most high-tech thing, but it solved a purpose. It addressed a problem that they had. So they were interested in testing it out. You know, kind of taking it for a ride and kicking the tires. Is this something that's going to actually address the need? Let's see if it does. Let's provide a little bit of seed funding into this business that thinks that they can create this. You know, and also a thing to kind of think of when you think about innovation is it does really come in all shapes and forms. You know, it can actually be a product, it can be a brand new service, it could be a process, it could even be a combination of those. So, you know, again, at the heart of it, innovation is just something different for a different result. And that's what you have to convince them of when you're creating a proposal is this is different because, this is revolutionary because, this is unique because. You know, again, it's just one of the things to think about is, you know, don't miss the forest for the trees. So what I mean by that is there's a lot of people that when they're creating these, when they're thinking about what is their innovation, they'll get locked down. They'll actually dive down a little bit too deep. They'll say, I'm creating this very specific thing that is for this one specific customer, that addresses this one specific need. But they may be getting to that product in a unique way. They may be doing a lot of data analysis and analytics that nobody else is doing. They may be looking at data flows. They may be, collecting sensor modules. They may be building new ways to collect information just so that they say, okay, this is feasible, I can do this. And the ways they've gotten to that, all the data they're doing, that analysis, that collection, that might be innovation in and of itself. So when you're thinking about what am I creating, what is unique about it, what does it suit and what does it do, don't get so deep down. Really take that 35,000 foot level view about what you're doing, what you're creating, and look at the gamut of different ways it can be applied. Look at it as a holistic thing, because there are opportunities where people have actually broken out what they're creating into separate innovations and then combined them later on. Now, if you do that, there's funding for each one of those. So it's a great way to grow a product that's really going to change the world, that's going to set the world on fire and make people want it and crave it. And still at the heart of it though, somebody has to want to buy it. There has to be a market for it. There has to be a customer. So when you're looking at that possibility and you're looking at these programs, they are set up to sell new products, to get products to market that just aren't out there. For each one of the agencies, commercial merit is one of the guiding principles. That's how they define, or they don't define how it needs to be commercialized, but that's how they define commercial merit. It's just somebody wants to buy it. It meets an unmet need in the market. It addresses pain points that people just can't get a solution for right now. I mentioned for granting agencies, it's going to be the outside market. For contracting agencies, it's going to be the government. But even for those contracting agencies, again, they buy limited products. They want to make sure that there is a much larger opportunity and much larger focus out there for how people can buy this. Who else besides, the government could buy this? Who else does this address a need for? Who else has this same pain point that you can sell this to? There has to be some other just opportunity out there. There has to be some other market segment that is just not the government. And really, it's just your best guess at this point. You don't have this data. You don't have this information. Most of the time you haven't verified that this is the market, this is the total market, this is the customer, this is the value proposition, this is how it needs to be built. Because you're looking at, can this actually be created? Can it be created in the way I think it needs to? Am I going to have to pivot and change? But they just want to know, what is that opportunity? How does it go forward? What are the other things that could potentially be done here? Because it is just that, find that customer, sell them that product, know that supply chain, know how you're going to get there. Again, just at the end of the day, it's about making someone that somebody wants, that they would actually buy, versus what's out there in the competition. And when you're thinking about that commercial validity, there's a couple things to kind of think about. Obviously you think about the things that you would normally think about for your business. What's the market size? What are the economic factors? Is it actually a need? Is it a want? Is it something that people have to have? But one of the big ones that a lot of people kind of forget about is competition. So typically when people look at competition, they think this is something nobody else has done. There is no competition for this. There is nobody that, is actually creating this. There is nothing else out there in the market that actually addresses this problem. But they forget that competition comes in a bunch of different forms. So when you think about competition, one of the things that you really need to think about is that when I look at competition, the way that people are addressing this problem now, the way that people are solving things, that is the status quo. That's what they're used to doing. So sometimes the competition is they just sweep this under the rug and they hope that it goes away. So what are you doing? What are you creating that drives that value that they go, I can't ignore this problem any longer. Somebody has something out there that is going to meet that need, that thing that I used to sweep under the rug and just hope it goes away. The thing that used to give me, terrors and, indigestion as I laid there in bed at night. Somebody can solve this now. So that is one thing to think about for competition. And competition is a big factor in these. Why are you unique? Why are you different? And how you stand out from the competition, how you solve areas that they can't, how you address, pain points that they can't get to. That is a big factor when you think competition. And that's a big factor when these agencies look at these proposals. What makes you different? What makes you unique? You'll hear me say that. You've already heard me say that quite a bit, but you'll hear me continue to say that is these programs are all about difference and uniqueness. So it's not just about, launching another thing that's already out there in the market. It's not just about the market's already saturated, but I think I can get a very tiny slice of this by making a copycat. It has to revolutionize something. So when you look at the SBIR programs, kind of one thing to note is that there are a lot of companies that actually got funding or their start through SBIR funding. You recognize a few of these there, like 23andMe, Qualcomm, Sonicare. But one of the most interesting case studies when it comes to SBIR funding is actually iRobot. So the people that made the Roomba got started out through DoD awards. They had 30 awards almost over a decade for about $10.2 million. Now they're a multinational company that employs over 450 people. And it was all based on their start as an SBIR company. But the government wasn't interested in those. They were interested in EOD robots. So iRobot said, well, we can make something that removes explosive devices. We can make something that can navigate terrain. We can make something that can, pick out an image recognition. That can actually know where it is, where it needs to go. It can create a path to get to what it needs to pick up, what it needs to dispose of. If you were paying attention, that's also the very same things that that little robotic vacuum cleaner does. So iRobot started out by creating these devices, and then they used that backbone, they used that technology, they used what they developed to create this product, to create a thing that you see in the Sky Mall magazine when you fly across country, well, when we can safely fly again. But they created this thing that had a market need, that had a niche, that had something that they could sell. So, when you look at these programs, it's not just about, I'm creating this very one thing with government funding that is going to be a product that I can sell. It's also about, how do I build on that? How do I make more opportunities? How do I actually grow it? How do I look at other markets, upgrades, shifts, whatever it is that's going to get you to a different product. But one of the things that is kind of germane, particularly since we talked about DoD, is contracting. So under government contracting, there are special things like set-asides. So the government says a certain percentage of awards have to go to, like historically underserved businesses. So small businesses, 8As, women-owned businesses, service-disabled veteran-owned businesses. there is a minimum amount, a minimum percentage of the awards that the government offers in contracting that has to be set aside for those types of businesses. Now, we talk about this here because even though the SBIR and STTR programs don't have any set-asides, they actually can't just say, we're only going to fund, women-owned businesses with this. We're only going to fund historically disadvantaged businesses this way. It does give a couple of really great things. So when you look at these contracting opportunities, one of the big things that they always have in there is things like past performance. So who have you served? What have you sold? Have you actually worked on a government contract before? Past performance for a lot of these can really make or break your ability to win that contract. Well, an SBIR award is past performance. You've actually worked under the government before. You created something with government funding. You actually were able to be successful and use government funding in a way that was authorized. Also, because you have to build that team and you have to build your business when you're under an SBIR award, that's part of what the award is for. It gives you a great kind of tool set, and it makes it look really good whenever one of these contracting officers is actually weighing your package against other ones when they look at other contracting opportunities. So you'll have a more robust business, you'll have a more robust team, and you actually have a just more robust pipeline for, we know how to do projects. We know how to actually set stuff up. And that's verifiable because they can see this data. They can see that you won the award. They can see that you performed on it from this date to this date. They can actually see the notes that any of the contracting officers put, anything like that. Because at the end of the day, anything that you can do to make yourself stand out from the pack when you're going after a contracting opportunity, just more than likely equals a win for you. Because you've shown that we have the expertise, we have the experience, we can actually move your project forward, we can move forward on this contract because we've shown it. We have these awards in our back pocket from an SBIR. We know how to work under, we know how to do our timesheets. We know how to do our chart of accounts. We know how to go through all of the audit trails because we already had to. That's something that we can do. That's something that you can trust us with. Because trust is a big thing with those. They have to be able to trust that you're going to be able to function and do the work. I mean, that's how you win any of these opportunities, is putting together all of that data and all that information that shows that I have the company, I have the team, or even just I am the person that can make this happen. Here's why. We went over a little bit of the proposal process. Just a thing to kind of keep in mind is that these do require some sort of proposal, no matter the opportunity. So you're going to pull together information. You're actually going to make sure that you're eligible. You're going to do some of the registration processes. So a lot of the registration processes for the SBIR and STTR programs directly map to the registration processes you would need to go after procurement opportunities. So there's a lot of kind of crossover there. If you're already doing the registrations for one, you might as well do the registrations for the other. For the most part, you only have to do those registrations once. But a couple of elements to kind of look at when you're doing any of these proposals. It doesn't matter whether it's for procurement, it doesn't matter whether it's for an SBIR. There are a couple things that you're going to have, like essentially just a budget. How are we going to use that money? Why do we need the money? What is the money going to do to actually help us go forward? And then some sort of documentation. So what are we going to use that money for? How do we know that the science behind this works? Or how can we meet your need? How can we design a product that actually addresses your concerns, addresses your problems, and provides a solution to you? And then once you submit, Don't ever submit also at the last minute. Don't ever submit on the day of. Typically, you'll just make mistakes at that point. You have to actually get stuff together. No matter the opportunity, we always recommend submitting at least 3 to 4 days ahead of time, just so you have time to sit back, you have time to actually go through stuff, you have time to verify, and you're not under a time crunch. You're not under a rush, because then you'll overlook stuff. You'll overlook a necessary thing. You'll overlook a signature that has to be on a form, and then if you're not passing the administrative review because you missed a signature, you missed a checkbox, you missed something that was required, no matter the opportunity, it's going to get what they call returned without review. So that means nobody ever looked at it. You did all of that work kind of for nothing. Now, I know that this was a lot of information, and for a lot of people, probably their heads are swimming and they go, well, this seems like a really great vehicle. These programs seem like they can really help me, but I don't even know how to go forward. I don't even know how to move. I don't even know what I need to do or what needs to happen for me to know more about these awards. Well, at that point, you come to us. So at the Arrowhead Center, we run the NMFAST program. And that's what we've talked about today. Is it's part of the NMFAST programs, let's just call it impetus, is to help small businesses across New Mexico go after SBIR and STTR opportunities. We're actually funded by the SBA to do this. So what we do for our services, what we do for resources, what we do for assistance, we don't charge small businesses for. It's actually why we're funded by the SBA, so we can do this, so we can help you move through all of these different elements, finding out which agency is the best for me. How do I put together this proposal? I can't understand these differences between the agencies, or which one I should focus on, or can I even focus on more than one? Yes, and we actually help with that. So as part of our services, we do things like reviews. We'll actually tailor what we do based on what the people are working on. We don't just send you a list of documents and say, okay, well, here's the documents that'll help you. Good luck. We hope you win. We'll actually help people kind of develop that initial idea to make that go forward. The only thing that we don't do is help people write content, because that's against most of our funding that comes from the SBA. But what we do is we help them get that just overview. We help them get that knowledge, and we help them get that experience to create a proposal package that is going to address the requirements, that when it goes before review, they're going to actually take it seriously. They're going to really sit down and review it and say, this looks like it meets all the criteria. Let's dive into this idea. Let's see if it's something that we want to fund. And we also do like podcast series. So we have an entire YouTube channel that has a video playlist set up for each one of the agencies, talks about their differences, talks about what they fund, talks about what they look at, talks about what their different funding levels are, how often they fund, really what you need to know before you go after these opportunities. And then one of the other things that we do is our annual Innovation Summit. So we have an annual SBIR Summit where it really kind of talks about these issues, takes stuff from that beginner to intermediate to advanced level of knowledge. And it also gives people the opportunity to talk to program managers one-on-one, to talk to some of these agency representatives and see if it's something that they'd be interested in funding. This is just kind of another thing about what we do for our resources on our website. But one of the key things that I wanted to discuss is our upcoming Innovation Summit. So this is our big kind of hallmark event for the year. The event is actually going to be virtual and free this year, just because, COVID, we can't be out, we don't need a space, we can handle everything through a virtual platform. So the summit will be December 9th. I'll make sure that when these slides go out to anybody that registered, that these links are clickable, but it's going to be a full day of panels that kind of talk about, well, what's really key in creating one of these proposal packages? What needs to go in there? How do you create one that stands out above the pack? You know, also, how do you commercialize stuff? How do you move between that valley of death, that gap between that phase 1 and phase 2, or excuse me, phase 2 and phase 3, where I've created a prototype, but I just can't get to market? What are some other, you know, opportunities out there? What are some other resources to help get me that funding? And then again, we'll have opportunities for people to talk one-on-one with program managers, both from the Department of Defense, but as well as other agencies like NASA and Department of Energy. So you can talk about what you're working on. You can see if it might align with their goals. You can see if it might align with their need. You can see something that they might be interested in funding. But, you know, just to wrap up, you know, why are these programs so key for building businesses? Well, again, it is risk-free. So you don't have to pay the money back. You don't have to actually give up part of your business, part of your idea. They don't want to take stuff from you. They want your business to grow. They want you to sell more products. They want you to hire more people. They want you to pay more wages, because at the end of the day, that's kind of what the government is about. That's what the return is on these, is the ability to have companies grow, have companies sell more, have companies pay more people, because then that grows tax base. And they will actually get a return because you're successful, your company is successful, your employees are successful. And then it also does provide that priority position for what they call sole source sales to government. So the ability to actually sell what you create directly to an agency, even if it wasn't the agency that funded it. So if you have something that DoD wants to buy, you don't have to go through the normal bid process and the open competition. If you've been awarded to create that product, if it's something that's been created with government funding, like under an SBIR, any of the agencies can go, well, that solves our need. That's actually something we need to buy. Let's buy it directly from you. We don't need to, you know, have you compete against like the Lockheeds, the Raytheons, the Boeings of the world. This is something we can go directly to you and purchase. We want to buy 1 million of them. You know, in a perfect world, that's exactly what would happen. But it does provide them that ability and that opportunity, which not a lot of other programs do. So it is that unique opportunity that these programs bring to the table for growing your business and succeeding. So thank you again. Again, apologies for the late start, ran into some issues there, but I wanted to, you know, open this up for some questions if anybody had a question that they wanted to ask. Also kind of to note that this will be shared with people afterwards along with all of the slides. So if there was something you missed, if there was something you want to go back over, I'll actually get those out probably later on this afternoon to everyone. But at the moment, does anyone have any questions? Looks like one came in through the chat. Oh, I'll just thank you, Gabriella. I greatly appreciate having the ability to kind of do this information session. You know, this is my contact information too. If anybody can't think of a question right now, or if you are hesitating on what to ask, don't hesitate to ping me. Send me an email, say, you know, you talked about this, but I really want more information on this. These seem like great programs, but I don't know if they're a fit for me. You know, can you talk with me about, do they fit? We are always more than glad to talk with everybody about what they're working on to see if it's, you know, SBIR worthy, or if it's a fit for these programs. We want to see people succeed. We want to see people be able to go forward. But if there are no further questions, or no questions, thank you everyone for attending today. And again, I'll make sure that the recording and the slides get out to everybody. But thank you for taking the time out. We really hope to hear from you. We hope that we can provide you with some help as you go through these programs, because we think these are really valuable. We think those are a really great opportunity for people to build their business, for people to grow, for people to be successful. I don't just say that because, ultimately I get paid to talk about the program, but even before I came to Arrowhead Center, before I started at NMSU, I worked for a small business that went after these opportunities just because they were so valuable. They were such a great tool. They were such a great resource for helping us make those things that we just sat there and said, wouldn't this be great if we could make this? It sounds cheesy, but it almost helped us make those dreams into a reality, where we said, if only we had money, we could create this. If only we had funding, we can make this thing, a product. I know that somebody would buy it. I know that somebody would be interested in it. And these programs are one of the greatest opportunities to do that. So thank you again, everybody. And I'll get these slides and the recording out. We hope that you enjoyed the talk. We hope that you enjoyed the information session today. And we really look forward to hearing from everybody soon.